Hey there, Polyvagal patron. This is a video, obviously. Hey there, Polyvagal patron. This is a discussion slash interview slash presentation of sorts that I did for a nursing support group. It was through Zoom. It was a very small, comfy, cozy kind of thing that was exclusively for these nurses that meet up every now and again, I guess once a week or once a month or so. And they let me just put my camera off to the side to record myself. So you won't see who else was in there. You won't hear what they're saying. Just me. The entire thing is here. It's just edited for time. But otherwise, yeah, the whole thing's here for you. And since you're a patron, you get access to the entire video. These will be released to my YouTube channel in smaller bits over time, but you get access to the entire thing all at once. Thank you so much for being a patron. So the polyvagal theory is from Dr. Stephen Porges, and it's really highlighted that there are a couple of different uses for the vagus nerve itself. And it's kind of the science, it's not about, it's called polyvagal theory, but it's really not exactly about the vagus. It is, but it really isn't, especially what we take from it. It should really be more about how we feel, what kind of behaviors we have access to, our level of social engagement, social connection, because it's really the science of how mammals connect with each other, but also how we respond to danger. And so how we kind of repel from each other as well. So it's not just about the vagus nerve, which gets lots of attention, but really it's more of this experiential thing that we can learn the foundation of and then apply to ourselves and get a new paradigm. Kind of a new narrative. So it's like a new paradigm for viewing the world, the scientific lens of the polyvagal theory. But then we apply it to ourselves, we can get a new narrative. And as Nadia was saying earlier, it's less judgment, less blame. There's no shame in it. It simply is the science of kind of how mammals connect and repel from each other. So the idea is that we have, and it's all built upon the autonomic nervous system. That's really the central focus of polyvagal theory, is the autonomic nervous system. And there's different uses for the autonomic nervous system. I'm sure everyone knows what that is. But basically, the basic idea is it controls all stuff that we don't have to think about, right? No one thinks about or plans their breathing or their digestion. Right now, I'm just digesting food. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about how much danger I'm in or not in. My autonomic nervous system is able to do that, all those things for me, which allows me to use my conscious mind for things like this, or binging Netflix, or watching a 49er game, or whatever else I want to do. So it's all about the autonomic nervous system and how this system kind of gets, I'll say, repurposed, or how it gets adapted maybe for different scenarios in life. So ideally, we are in the ventral vagal state of safety and social engagement. It's one of there's two parasympathetic branches. Usually it's sympathetic versus parasympathetic, but Dr. Porges in the polyvagal theory proposed that there's actually two utilizations for, there's two parasympathetic branches, both of which come from the vagus nerve. So the first one is the safety and social engagement, parasympathetic ventral vagal branch. And that, when that is active, that allows us to socially engage with each other. If that's not active, we don't really have access to prosocial behaviors like making eye contact and smiling, or making eye crinkles, like when you listen, these little crinkles form here in your eye that indicates that I'm a safe mammal. If I was in a flight-fight energy, I wouldn't be able to do that. So those pathways, the ventral vagal pathways, kind of get cut off. We don't really have access to them. And so when we have access to them, we can do those prosocial things. We can get closer together. We can hug each other. We can use something called vocal prosody, which is just having a greater range of voice, like that sing-songy quality of your voice, where you can go up, like when you have a question, and you can bring your voice up to signify what you mean. Or you can lower your voice if something's really serious, and your boss calls you in the office and they have something really important to say to you. They lose their vocal prosody. Like right now, I have enough vocal prosody to show that I'm relatively a safe mammal, right? Or human being, but we're talking about mammals in general, that mammals have this pro-social, social engagement, safety pathway that they can access. Reptiles don't, birds don't, fish don't. So that's the first autonomic nervous system state. We have 3 different states. That's the first one. And that's the evolutionary most recent one. If we can't access the safe and social state, we drop down what's called the polyvagal ladder. And the polyvagal ladder is a metaphor for how these autonomic nervous system states are built basically into our bodies. The safe and social state connects from our face to our neck directly to our heart. So the condition of our heart directly affects how much we can express ourselves through our facial muscles or tilt our head when we're listening. If we're not safe, we can't do those things. The flight-fight system is the second polyvagal state, and that's the sympathetic nervous system. And pretty obvious that system is for evasion, running away. That's the flight system. And the fight system is for using aggression. And it's not just to beat people up, it's to use aggression to create space so that someone can then escape utilizing the flight system and get out of whatever situation that is. So if we can't be safe, we drop down into our flight-fight system, but specifically it's flight, then fight. So if we can't be safe, then we drop down to our flight system. If we can't run away, or if we can't avoid this situation, we drop down into our fight energy, the fight sympathetic behaviors, in order to create space and then run away and then get to safety. But if we can't run away and we can't fight, we drop even further down the polyvagal ladder into our shutdown, the dorsal vagal. This is the second parasympathetic branch. We drop into our shutdown state. And the shutdown state is responsible for collapsing. It looks like death feigning, playing dead, possums, playing possum. When a mouse gets in the jaws of a cat, it's not necessarily dead. It might just be limp. That dorsal vagal system has basically come alive and the body collapses. Those pathways are responsible for that collapse kind of behavior. So those are the three basic primary states of the autonomic nervous system, of the polyvagal theory. These things can mix, but those are the three basic ones so far, and they're built within us in a hierarchy. They evolved in this hierarchical fashion. So if we can't be safe, drop down in sympathetic. If we can't run away, can't fight, we drop down in a shutdown state. The shutdown state's the oldest one. It lives in our gut. You can feel it. If you're in a situation that's just kind of creepy, like that system comes alive in your gut and you can kind of feel it twist. The flight-fight system, you can feel your heartbeat pick up. Your eyes might go wide as you focus. Your range of attention really kind of gets narrow. So as nurses, you probably experienced that in really intense situations that flight-fight system came on. You weren't running away, you weren't fighting, but it's more about being mobilized. In that system, you can mobilize. And in the dorsal vagal shutdown system, it's more about immobilizing. It's about collapsing. I think part of what you're expressing is that, or what I'm hearing at least, is that these states, the flight-fight state, well, first off, we can get stuck there, or the shutdown state as well. So these states, these biological pathways are built within us in order to help us survive through millions of years, however long of evolution. That's what we're left with. And even though we don't exactly need to survive in the ways that we would have way back when, these pathways still exist within us. So even in situations where there's no actual danger, like being at work and having a lot of stuff pile up, there's no danger. Our life's not in threat, but it feels like we experience it as danger. We have concepts of like time and deadlines and whatnot, right? So these pathways still get engaged, even if there's not actual dangers. It's sometimes it's just about our perception of danger. You know what I mean? So for example, I'm a huge 49er fan. I love football. For someone who doesn't like football, they're not going to be as crushed as I am when they lose the Super Bowl twice in a row, and I'm like basically in tears. Someone who doesn't care about football is like, what is this? You know what I mean? But my perception is that my well-being rides on this game. So the perception, it matters. But these things exist within us still, and what happens is that we can get stuck in one of the defensive states. Ideally, like Nadia said, we want to exist in the safe and social state as much as possible. It's not realistic. No one does. I don't. I do not exist in this like super happy, connected, huggy place all the time. That's not me. I haven't met that person. I don't know who that is. That's not realistic, right? So we want to be able to tap into the defensive states, but then go down the ladder and then come back up. We want to be able to stress out at work and get stuff done, but then at the end of the day, be able to like climb back up our ladder into our safety state, connect with our family, have a moment of stillness or meditation or whatever it is you do. That's what we want to have happen, but we can get stuck in these states, and part of that can be the way we're raised. We can actually get stuck just based on the needs of survival. And I think as adults too, if you exist in a state that requires more mobilization, you might have a harder time getting out of it. I presented to police a couple times, and they expressed kind of similar to what Kelsey was saying. They express like always being in this flight fight energy, and for them it's actually a skill. We consider, or in therapy we consider hypervigilance to be quote unquote bad. I don't know about nursing. In nursing, is hypervigilance being on guard or aware or thinking ahead of time, planning, always being mobilized? Is that a good thing, a skill, or how do you consider that? Yeah, so if you have to exist in that state plus deal with coworkers and bosses and the demands of wherever you work and changing policies and procedures, like if you have to exist in that state where you're always kind of on it, on guard or expecting the worst, it's going to be really hard to just snap out of that. These polyvagal states, it's not a light switch. You don't choose to go in and out of them. Your nervous system can get stuck there, and it goes there based on what it's perceiving or detecting as necessary for that moment. And it fluctuates moment to moment. So ideally, we want to have enough safety state, not energy, but we want the strength of our safety pathways to be strong enough to handle all of that, but then to recover and climb back up the ladder. So with the police, for them, hypervigilance is a skill. It's a tool, and asking them to calm that down, for them, they said like that's like sentencing us to death. Like you're asking us to go out there and not be prepared for the realities of our job. But they get stuck there, and turning it off after hours is quite a challenge. And there's all these not just mental health repercussions, but physical repercussions of that. Really high rates for police, I think it was, higher rates of suicide than general population, depression. And I believe it's similar for nurses as far as depression and overwhelm and whatnot. You're going to find higher rates in these. Even teachers have higher rates of burnout and whatnot. But there's all these consequences for existing in these defensive states. You're not supposed to exist in the flight fight state for hours and hours and hours. It's supposed to be quick. Like there's danger, I run away, and that 30 seconds later, I'm out of that state, back with my family or my herd or whatever it is, and connecting, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. Quick bursts of this mobilization adrenaline energy, not 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day, whatever the shift is. It's not supposed to be like that. That's not what we're built, or we didn't evolve to exist in that for that long, So it's extremely taxing on our system. And if we get stuck in these states, that's called trauma. Trauma, through the lens of polyvagal theory and just psychophysiology in general, is trauma is being stuck in an autonomic nervous system state of defense. Just the safety pathways are not strong enough, or we've lost access to them to climb out of it back up into our ventral vagal state of safety. That's what we consider trauma. Not the event, not what you go through exactly, more of how the event impacts you. Yeah, so the culture of the places we work, that's going to affect, it kind of reinforces. We have to exist in this flight fight state, and then if we don't get the kind of support we need from the communities that we're in, no matter what those are, it kind of just reinforces it. I know for therapists, we have honestly like this nauseating level of support. It's like, I'm fine, leave me alone. If they detect something's up, they'll ask like, well, hey, you okay? What's going on? I'm good. You know what I mean? Like it's a bit much. So I know seems like first line responders, is that the phrase? Is that right? It's not like, there's not this culture of patience and checking in and how you doing, feelings and connecting like that. It's not really a thing, right? So those are the three primary states of the polyvagal theory. Those getting stuck in those states, whether we survived a thing and we got stuck in those states, because that could absolutely happen, or it's just this ongoing day after day burnout stress kind of thing. I think we can get stuck in these states, especially if the communities we're a part of are not going to provide something called co-regulation. And co-regulation is what happens between two mammals, where one of them should be or is in their state of safety, social engagement, and the other one is down their ladder, but they're able to accept those cues of safety. So if Nadia and I, connected at some point, and she was like, or before, let's say she and I talked before you guys came on, right? And she was really stressed out, and I was smiling, and I had vocal prosody, and she could see my eye crinkles. These cues would tell her nervous system like, oh, okay, it would help her climb her polyvagal ladder closer or into the state of safety. That's co-regulation. That's the basic idea, is that one mammal can provide cues of safety, the other one can pick them up and actually help climb their polyvagal ladder. So if you don't have that in the cultures of wherever you work or in your home, in your friendships, if you don't have that, it's easier to get stuck in these states of defense. Yeah, so there's a concept called story follows state. And the idea here is that the thoughts we have in our mind follow or run parallel to, but we'll say follow whatever autonomic state that we're in. If I'm going to work in a safe and social state, my thoughts are going to be, I'm going to do great today. I love my job. I can't wait to check in with whoever about their weekend. That's going to be that safety, the thoughts that might come with the safety state. If I exist in like a flight fight state, my thoughts are going to be more, especially with fight, more blaming, more anticipating something going bad, more planning, but like in a stressed out way, not in like a proactive way, more like just stressed out, that kind of pressured thinking and whatnot. We're going to think that people are out to get us. This person doesn't like me. Like I work with students all the time who are in a flight fight state and they fail a class and they say, well, the teacher doesn't like me. It's like, no, you didn't do the work. You didn't show up to school. It's not because the teacher doesn't like you. But in that state, these are the thoughts that come in their mind, is like, someone's out to get me. And then in the shutdown state, that's that collapsed immobilization. In that state, the thoughts are going to be very pessimistic. Like, there's no point. I'm going to work, but there's no point. Or I don't think I'll be able to help whoever it is today. Or I'm dreading. So I think dread could be a feeling there. I'm dreading interacting with whoever it is. So it's just that empty, hollow, like a loss of energy, so that your thoughts will follow and match that. All right, those are the three basic primary states of the polyvagal theory. But these can mix, and these can create secondary states, just like we have like primary colors, red, yellow, blue. You can mix those and create secondary colors but they are green, purple, and orange. So when we mix the top of the ladder safety state plus the middle of the ladder flight fight state, that equals play. We call that play. So we're safe, we're socially engaged, but we're mobilized. Okay, so when we're playing, we are making eye contact. We are following the rules together. We're sharing a moment. We're taking turns. So there's mobilization, but within this sort of social engagement, but also structure. If you look at kids that play, or even if you have dogs, I have 3 dogs in my home here. Dogs, when they play, they'll look at each other. When they are no longer playing, they'll turn their head, and their voice will change. It'll become like a deeper growl. That signifies I'm no longer socially engaged. I'm taking away my safe eye contact. I'm no longer socially engaged. So that's not play. Traumatized kids who try to play have a really hard time. These are the kids that we say, quote unquote, don't play well with others, because they'll start playing, but their capacity to socially engage is very compromised, so they can't really maintain that. And then it starts to turn into just flight fight energy. You have to have the safety stuff, the safety pathways active at the same time as the flight fight energy. So that's called play. That's the first mixed state. Second mixed state is when we have the safety pathways active at the top of the ladder along with the shutdown pathways at the bottom of the ladder. So the ventral vagal plus the dorsal vagal. When those are combined, that creates something called stillness. This is where we can immobilize, but be okay with it. So we immobilize to do things like meditate. Yoga has some immobilization in there. Using the restroom, being intimate with somebody, relaxing, just sitting still, and just kind of being in the present moment. You can't be still and be okay with it unless you have your safety pathways active. So that's safety plus shutdown. That equals something called stillness. And the last mixed state is something called freeze. And this is where we have the mobilization, flight, fight energy active along with the shutdown, immobilization. So we're mobilized, but also immobile at the same time. And what that looks like is that we're revved up. Our heartbeat is way up. Our blood is pumping. Our muscles are tense, but we can't move. So we're immobilizing at the same time. It looks like a panic attack. I'm terrified of heights. It's getting better, but I have panic attacks. If I get up high enough, especially if I'm in a car and I can't see the ground or I can't see over the cliff, I'll have a panic attack. where I really tense up, my breathing gets really shallow, but I can't move. I'm really kind of just stuck there in that moment. So a panic attack is a really good example of what freeze can look like day to day. Okay, freeze also comes from surviving potentially traumatic events. If you're really revved up but immobilized, that could lead to someone being traumatized, being stuck in that state of freeze, that mixed state of freeze. So play, stillness, and freeze. That's awesome. There's this thing called neuroception, which you're kind of touching upon. Neuroception it's basically the process of I guess it applies to any species, but I'll just say mammals, which mammals is not a species, humans is a species, but whatever. Mammals, we get these cues from the outside, right? Internally also, but let's just start with the outside. We get these cues of safety or danger. Or I'll just say we our senses pick up on our eyes see things, our nose smell things, we touch things, we feel. So all these different sensory stimuli come in, and it goes to the brainstem. And the brainstem really is where things are, quote unquote, decided as far as various levels of safety or danger. It's not a conscious thing. No one is like processing how safe or dangerous something is, really. It's all like brainstem stuff that's like built within our DNA. We are all built to respond to certain things universally pretty much the same way. So if my eyes went wide and I started talking in a monotone voice, like you might feel like, whoa, right? If I sold that, I'm not a great actor, but if I sold that, your nervous system might want to back up a little bit and say like, what just happened there? Like Justin's safety just got pulled away. And so you might feel that. Sometimes people feel right here of like, whoa, something just happened. So there's certain things, or like encroaching upon space, eyes wide, monotone voice, flat facial affect where we're not utilizing our facial muscles. These things tell someone else's nervous system whether or not I'm safe. So they don't have to think about it. It's just ingrained into our DNA to respond in certain ways. More or less, I mean, it looks different person to person, but more or less that we respond in very similar, pretty much predictable ways. And that's called neuroception, where these things come in, brainstem filters it, decides safe, dangerous, or life threat. And then those pathways are fired as far as safety, mobilization, or immobilization. So what we can do consciously is, just like Nadia said, like we can identify what brings us to safety and what doesn't bring us to safety. So certain people I'm around, not so much. Certain people I am around, yeah, I feel different. I feel lighter. I'm able to breathe easier. I can smile. I'm noticing that I want to get closer and hug the person. These things would indicate that this is good for my nervous system in general, okay? So we have to be curious, like what textures or what smells, what colors, what brings us those feelings of safety. So you have to kind of relate what movements. Like I know for me, dancing's not it. But for the next person, they might know that dancing is it, or martial arts, or Tai Chi, or whatever kind of movement feels right for them. That they just know, like, oh, that something felt different. So I'm gonna kind of be curious about that and follow that. And the things that don't feel right, I don't know if we can cut all those out of our life really, but if we have more of an idea of what doesn't feel safe, there might be something we can control there. Like my office here, I've gone out of my way to really build this to feel like when I walk in, I want to feel safe. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel like I can be still and just kind of sit down and do some work or do some journaling in the corner over there. So I've kind of designed my office to be like that. There's sound panels on the wall, which are mostly for the podcast, but I've noticed that when I walk into this room, because the rest of the house doesn't have that, when I walk into the room, it's noticeably quieter, and I like it. Like my system just like I like the dampened noise. It speaks to my system. So we can notice what doesn't feel safe, and maybe we can make some alterations around it. But yeah, that's perfect though. Like when we depending on who we are around, I have like multiple thoughts I'm trying to get out at the same time. Depending on who we are around, we will feel ruptures in the co-regulation. So we'll feel ruptures in the feedback loop of them and me. Like we're talking or socially engaging, and if they look off to their phone, I'll experience that as like a rupture. There's a disconnection here. Now, someone might take that even further and say, was I boring? Like there's something about me that was, you know what I mean? But if we just look at it as like, oh no, I just had a feeling. I had a feeling of rupture, and I could see why. I could see where that came from, which is they looked away when I was right in the middle of a sentence, right? That paradigm we can apply to the situation and say, oh, I get it. Now I have a new narrative. It's not that I'm boring. It's that they got distracted, and that's not a personal thing. It's just, and then my system felt that slight little rupture, that disconnection. My system felt that, and maybe even I caught my thought of like, am I boring? Maybe I caught the thought, and I can say, no, hold, slow down, Justin, hold on, and then bring it back and say, no, I just have this feeling, and that's okay. And they looked away from their phone, and that's okay too. Maybe a little bit rude, but that's okay too. And it's not that big of a deal versus, I mean, because things can go way the other way. Now, if we're around parents, if we're raised in environments where this is the day in and day out, not just looking at the phones, but severe depression, their own flight fight stuff going on. There's that's going to definitely, when we're around that, we shift into a defensive state. And then we're going to kind of exist there, and maybe we need to get our needs met. But then, those stories are going to build up around that. You know what I mean? About our worth, or around what it means to be who we are and how lovable we are, or whatever it is, you know? So those stories are going to build up because there's no like paradigm to view it through. There's no, like, once, like you've said, Nadia, once you learn the polyvagal theory in this instance, or maybe if you learn more about attachment or about whatever it is, once you have that viewpoint, that paradigm, you apply it to yourself, then it's like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. Here's my reaction. That makes sense. Here's my feelings. Yeah, and it's okay to feel that way. You know, there's no judgment there. There's no shame. Dog in the background, sorry. Also a child in the background. He just got home from swimming practice. God. So they're screaming and barking. Everyone's safe. I think actionable steps is I don't know, actionable, but I think being curious is a good idea. And just really noticing what it's like to be you in certain contexts. So like when I go to hospitals, I'm really curious about how I feel, because there's beeps and there's voices and there's carts and rolling around and it's all kinds of, yeah. So there's all these, it's like a flood of sensory information, and you may not stop and realize that, like, you're holding your breath a little bit because your body's picking up all these cues, and it's like, it feels like it's in danger, and your job is literally stressful and life or death, so that makes sense. But I think it's important to slow down enough to recognize, like, how do I feel right now when I'm around this person or in this environment or with this sound? And if you have an opportunity to be in a quiet space, like, check in with how that feels. You might have that flight fight energies lingering, and still the breathing might be shallow. And so, like, consciously make the attempt to slow your breathing. If you can slow your breathing down, that means you're safe, and that's going to actually activate those pathways. That's a good thing. You want to activate those pathways, and you might have to do that by consciously just slowing your breathing down on the exhale. That will kick on that parasympathetic system, the safety parasympathetic system. Goodness gracious. All this stuff is edited out of the podcast. That's why you don't hear me stumble upon my own words. So yeah, I think that's an actionable step. Just slow down. Like, just notice how it feels to be you in different contexts. Notice how it feels like to be you at home in one room versus another. Because, like I said, this room is way different than the rest of my house. But one room might have more of an echo, and that might affect your system differently. Notice how you feel when you're cooking dinner. If you cook dinner, I hate cooking. But notice, what you feel like when you're smelling a lemon. Like, make the effort to do that, though. Like, consciously use your senses and come to the present moment, and just, like, notice, like, how does that affect my breathing? Am I more or less likely to smile when I do this or that? I know for me, I hate cooking, but I like to grill, and when I'm grilling, I feel good. When I'm cooking in the kitchen, I can't stand it. So I think that's a step: is become curious, notice what it feels like, and then whenever you notice that works for you, do more of it. Mindfully. You have to really feel it, though. You have to really pay attention and feel it. And then the things that don't work for you, ask, like, is there something I can do to change this? Is there and at work, there might not be a whole lot. But at home, where you have control over the environment, there might be a lot you can do there. And I think simple things like cleaning up clutter, that can go a long way. It might not be a bad thing, but it's just recognize. So laundry for you might be generally a no. Maybe there's something you can change. Like maybe it doesn't have to have that strong deadline. Like that could be an alteration you make, and then you say, well, how do I feel about it now? For me, I don't like it, but when I'm doing it, I kind of don't mind it. And there is something zen-like or peaceful about knowing things are just so, and it fits in the drawer and they're all stacked up nicely or lined up. We do the Marie Kondo method where they're all lined up. So I think that's actionable steps that are pretty simple. They don't cost any money. You just got to be more curious about what's going on within you just throughout the day, and noticing what brings you to safety and what do you feel pulled toward and what do you feel repelled from. I think that's a pretty good gauge. What makes you smile more than something else? What brings you a lighter sense of breathing? Those are pretty easy gauges of kind of where to head. That's brilliant. Like these different states, the one thing that works in one state might not work for the other state. When I'm in a shutdown place where I'm like really just kind of like the energy sucked out of me, I just want to sit quietly in the corner. And I'm good. Like I can do that for like 5-10 minutes. And if I can mindfully do that and really feel it, the energy starts to come back in my system. And then my mind will come up with a story or an explanation or a clue as to what to do next. And so it might be, I like to swim. And that if I have a lot of sympathetic energy, swimming is a good outlet for me. My mind will tell me it's time to swim. So I go swim. It's time to play with the kids. I'll go play with the kids. It's time to do some push-ups. I'll do push-ups. Like whatever my mind tells me is the next step, I pretty much trust as long as I have access to the thing, So if I'm in that fight state, push-ups are perfect because it utilizes the top half muscles. It's perfect. If I'm in more of an anxious flight state, go out for a walk might be helpful because you're utilizing your legs. And if you can mindfully do so and feel it, that could be helpful. And then I might be ready to go hug the kids and socially engage or pet the dog and look at them in the eyes. So each state will have a different sort of impulse to it as to what can be helpful. If I'm in a shutdown state and like really just drained, hitting a punching bag is not going to do a whole lot for me. It's going to feel like I can't handle that. It's too much. Yeah. So it's really listening to these states. I mean, the more adept you get, the more like aware, I guess you get. You can start to identify like when I smell a lemon, that works for me in this state. When I punch something, that works in this state. When I just when I'm sitting quietly, that works in this state, or when I'm playing with my kids or whatever it is. These things appeal to different polyvagal states, not the same one, not the same activity for everyone. It just might be. So now next time you notice that, you might ask yourself, like, how do I feel right now? Do I feel more like hitting somebody or running away? Don't do it. Don't hit anybody. But you get the idea. Like when I go swimming, like when it's time to, like when I have that more of that fight energy, I will stand there in the water and just like use my muscles to like push water, and I feel it. And then I'll be like, oh, that feels like it was enough. And then I'll start just kicking my legs and swimming. Underwater, I'll kick my legs and I can feel that energy come out. And then the next step is, well, up the ladder would be social engagement. And by that time, I'm ready to play with the kids in the water and have a good time. But like I listen to, even in the water, like how do I want to move? How does my body want to move in this moment to get that energy out or discharge it? Yeah, so it's perfect. Swimming by myself is one thing, but when I have the kids out there to play with and socially engage with, and it's way different. Pets are awesome. Dogs are awesome. Totally, yeah. Dogs are fantastic co-regulators because they do really well with their own self-regulation as long as they have, their needs met and they can move around and have enough space to run and whatnot. Like they're really good co-regulators. They're so good at that. And I don't know if you believe this, but dogs seem to like know how you're doing and they'll like rest their head on you. And it seems like, I don't know, they kind of get it. The animals are really good at that, of just listening to what they need. They don't have all of our conscious thoughts. As best I can tell, they don't have all the stuff that we do, to ourselves and to each other. They just exist in their bodies in the moment. Simplified. Life simplified.